Welcome to the Penny Z Show, where you get to learn how real people overcame real issues. Get ready to take notes, and most importantly, take action. Here's your host, Penny Z.
Hi, this is Penny Z, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Penny Z Show, where we are focused on transforming people's lives one life at a time. We're here to talk about real, relevant, and relatable topics. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. As all of you know and have watched us either on YouTube or on our website or listened to us on our podcast channels, we are in a series called Overcoming Your I'm Not Enough Story. And if you've heard my story, you know that for some of us, we've had that for a good portion of our life. For some of it might have just been a season, and for others, it was a short time. But I believe that we all have, in some way, shape, or form, a story around I'm not enough. And so I want to be able to share that, have open and vulnerable conversations to let us all know and to let our listeners know that you're not alone. So today, I am very excited to introduce my guest. I was actually, we have a mutual friend, and our mutual friend introduced us. And when I was speaking to Janet and getting to know her, I did not want to stop talking to her. She is just a wealth of information. She's got an incredible background, and I was just so excited that she agreed to be on our show. So let me do a little bit of a bio for all of you listeners to let you know the wonderful lady that we have on our show today. Janet Zaretsky is a master professional coach, author, and speaker that helps people unleash their brilliance, confidence, and visibility in the world. Janet has worked with over 32,000 people in the past 22 years of her career. Janet is a powerful advocate for ending the gender gap, yay, both in pay and in influence. Her work with women has led her to be a frequent contributor in Forbes and the author of Where'd My Confidence Go and How Do I Get It Back? I love that title. Known as the BS to Brilliance Master, Janet has a gift for having you unapologetically and confidentially express yourself and be successful at it as the unique and powerful professional that you really are. Janet is a TEDx and a keynote speaker, a corporate trainer, and an expert in communication, leadership. She's an international coach of the Federation membership. She's an enhanced conversational intelligence coach. I'd like to learn more about that. Certified in behavioral style instructions, a graduate of Coach U, and a former senior program leader for the Landmark Worldwide. Welcome, Janet. How are you today?
Thank you so much. Thanks. You want to talk about not enough. You read your bio and you go, really? Really?
That's impressive, and I'm sure there's more for your bio because we try to keep it to a certain amount of words and a certain amount of time frame. Is there anything else perhaps that's not there before we delve into the story that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Nope, about to do my second TEDx. That would be it.
Yay! Well, that's actually on my vision board is to do my first TED Talk. So maybe you can help give me some advice on that. But we're not here for me. We're here for you and for our listeners. So let's go ahead and start with your story. Tell me about the time in your life as we're talking about overcoming your I'm not enough story, where you felt that you weren't enough, you were less than, my story is I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not athletic enough. What is your story and how did you discover that for yourself, Janet?
So it's really interesting when I think about this. I have several different stories, but I'm going to start in my core family. So I'm one of 5 kids. I'm the second daughter with 3 younger brothers. And I was always, it's not enough, but it's really too much. Like I was too loud. I was too emotional. I always said I was a little bit of the black sheep in my family, although I excelled in everything, but I didn't fit in. And my experience, and even probably until about 20 years ago, maybe less than that even, whenever I would be around my siblings, I would experience I'm the wrong one. So my mom died when I was 29. She was only 53. She had cancer from smoking. And, we completed things during that period of time, but it was later when I did transformational work where I really got how it was really more my mother's issue than my issue, but I was always left in the experience of there was something wrong with me. And I would say mostly it was because I was emotional and I was expressive. And it was really, really hard. And even I think when it turned for me was, I can't remember what year, but it was my youngest daughter, who is 25. She was a young child. I can't remember if it was 5, 7, or 8. And I was with my family at Thanksgiving with their spouses, their kids, and my brother started hammering her. You know, it was like, you know what I mean? It's like that. And it was a whole brain reactivation of my past. And I, for the first time, stood up to him and said, you don't have the right to do that. She's a kid, leave him alone. But that was actually a turning point, because it was, I showed up in the world as super powerful. And then I'd get around my family and I'd shrink. And that was the time that I took my power back. So that's one big thing. Then I have another one if you want to hear a second.
Sure, I'd love it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, I was a nurse for 21 years, which I don't think that said that in my bio, but I was a registered nurse. I worked in the intensive care, then I worked for the state of California doing high-risk infant follow-up. And then I changed careers 23 years ago and went into business and became a coach, et cetera. And then in all the years when I was leading programs for Landmark Worldwide, you know, I kept elevating and elevating. And then I was at a particularly high level and being trained. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And the man that was training us acknowledged us, said, you know, it's hard to be the best of the best. Put yourself in a new experience and you are the worst of the worst. And it really was that experience. And I got so reactivated reactionary at one time, I couldn't complete a sentence. And the thing that made me know how off I was later when we were debriefing, he said, and you have to give up being nice. I was like, oh my God, I've never been accused of being nice. Something is really off. But it was still all that somehow whatever I am isn't the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did heal that through transformational work. And then you said something about the conversational intelligence, CIQ, which is the neuroscience of communication. And that has also revolutionized things for me, because what I know about it, and we can get into it if you want to, but it's brain pattern. And it's brain pattern of threat. And so I can see the brain pattern and have trained myself not to react to the brain pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on one thing before, but I would love for you to really dive more into the neuroscience. That was one of our several conversations that we had that I felt very fascinated by, and I think makes a lot of logical sense when you're trying to do the transformational work that you're working on. It explains why we experience what we experience. But one of the things you had just said was being nice. And I just want to touch on that, and maybe we can talk about it for just a little bit or share a little bit more of your experience. But one of the realizations that I've had in the last couple of years and going through my own personal transformation as well is that I was nice and I was being taken advantage of, or I would be weak, or, I wasn't getting what I wanted. And yet I'm like, well, what's wrong? I'm nice, I'm polite. And what I realized, it wasn't about being nice, because being nice is what little girls are taught to be, I think, versus what little boys are. And I'm stereotyping, so you can help me with this. But I had to think about that. What does nice mean to me? And how is it showing up in my life? And how is it, being projected or being presented or perceived by other people? And what I decided is being nice for me was putting me in a weak position. So I changed just the wording, which helped me change my thought process, which is probably what you're going to talk about with the neuroscience. But instead of saying I'm nice, I would tell myself, and it's on my refrigerator as one of my affirmations, I am kind but not weak. That is a statement for me that's a bold statement that says, I can still respect you as a person. I can still be kind and not scream and yell at you in handling a situation, but don't mistake my kindness for weakness. Versus I think nice for me was a weakness. So I don't know if you had a similar experience, but I just wanted to share that and see if you had any other thoughts on the nice topic that you were just mentioning, and then love for you to talk more about the neuroscience behind it all.
Sure. So I say nice is nauseating.
I love it. That's awesome.
I want to say a little bit about that. So for me, nice is inauthentic. It's I'm saying something or agreeing to something, and I'm, like you said, I'm putting myself last. The other thing is that people, and this is women-centric, will couch their views instead of being straight. And instead of outright, if you ask me to do something, well, I'll think about it, or okay. And when I haven't looked to see if it actually works, or I don't want to do it, but I'm so afraid to be straight about it, or I'm so afraid to tell you something that I white lie, which people say, well, that's nice. Well, no, it's not. You're actually ripping people off of the experience. Mm-hmm. And the other piece is that that to me speaks to your opinion of the other person is so weak they can't handle the truth.
Mm-hmm. I go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, when I have people get that, then it's like, oh God, that's awful. I think they're a big person. Fine, then tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm. I heard a statement, and I'm not going to get the wording exactly right, but it was something along the lines of, please don't be selfish with your knowledge, but share it. Something along those lines. And it was about being timid or trying to tell somebody what they wanted to hear. And it was almost like the way that it was put, it was like, please, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Don't be selfish. Tell me what I need to hear. Maybe do it in a kind way. But it was a very interesting statement, and I'm not doing it justice, but it kind of reminds me of the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, I say be ruthlessly compassionate.
I like that.
I'm compassionate and I'm ruthless. One of my clients calls me the Velvet Hammer. And I think it's pretty accurate, is that, I'll say what you need to say. I'll say what you need to hear. Mm-hmm. And I don't do it to be mean. I do it because I care. Mm-hmm. And every time I step over something, I'm ripping you off of the opportunity for you to grow and be a bigger, better person.
That's very true. That's very true. And I think when we come from I'm not enough, that's a lot of our behavior. Because we're insecure and we're not strong and we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or we want to be liked or avoid being not liked. So that's a lot of the behavior that we project in that space.
In the world of liked and not liked, that's quite a bit of what's at the source of the gender gap continuing.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the Global Economic Forum predicts that it will be 217 years before we close the gender gap worldwide.
Wow.
That should shock you.
Shocking.
It piss you off, because that's me.
Yeah. Come on, women, let's go.
Well, but we have to look at it holistically. So, this is not anti-men. I'm for men. I love men. I'm married, and we need male allies. But we have taken a distinct, I need to be liked point of view, so much so that oftentimes we rob ourselves of power. Now, I don't know. I don't want to be arrogant enough to say I know the answer. I know that together women can accomplish anything. And if we unite, that we will end the gender gap, we will. Mm-hmm. But we're going to have to deal with several different aspects of our natural, I don't even know if it's natural, of the way we've started operating with men in corporate settings, even as a entrepreneur. One of the things that I deal with entrepreneurial women that are service-based versus, if I'm selling a widget, I don't set the price at the widget. I'm going to sell it for this. If I'm selling my service, what is it worth? And can you stand for your worth in the face of someone pushing against you? Mm-hmm. And that's where people will give up. Like, I've got to be nice and kind. I don't even like the word kind. I've got to be nice. I've got to be liked. They'll be mad. They'll think badly of me. Yeah, but you go home with yourself at night. How do you feel about you? Mm-hmm. You know, there's all the different aspects of it. So I think we've got to be awake to the different things that we've been doing that have resulted in where we are, and try something new. Discover, what is it going to take? Mm-hmm. What is my fully expressed voice? What is my language?
So in working on transformational coaching and your experience in the last, 22 plus years and now the direction that you're going with your career, share with me how the neuroscience plays a role in this.
Well, it's funny. So I started studying it I had been reading about it. And then I was invited into this CIQ, Conversational Intelligence, by Judith Glaser, who just passed away about 10 days ago. Brilliant, amazing woman. And I went in the first class that she used, to train coaches in it. And when I went onto the webinar to be exposed to it, it was like Christmas for me, because I told you I was a nurse, so I'm very science oriented. I'm very bottom line, hard science. And it's like, oh, my science brain, my coachy brain, we got together, we had a party.
Awesome.
And that's how it's been. It's revolutionized things, because just like what you're doing, which I so admire and so appreciate, is human beings live in this background conversation of not good enough, or said a different way, something's fundamentally wrong with me. And if we can use neuroscience, which is proven and, it keeps evolving, if we can use neuroscience to help you see patterns of brain patterns and patterns of behavior, you won't deal with something's wrong with me. It's simply, oh, I've got good grooved in that brain pattern. And if I can see that and I learn how to recognize it and break it and retrain my brain, I can literally alter life.
So is it kind of like, obviously we say we have a record going around in our head. So it's really kind of having that record and then re-taping over it, so to speak, and kind of putting new grooves in that record to be able to change our neuroscience and change our mindset to be able to go in a different direction. I call it the stop, drop, and roll process for me personally, but a little less scientific.
Yeah, well, it's exactly that. And then it's recognizing when that record's playing. So there's a whole series of things I do, but it's like there's thoughts that are associated with it. There are physical sensations, there are emotions, and we write them out. We do this whole exercise that takes me about 30 minutes, and we write it out, and they can see, and what triggers it. That's the most important piece. What triggers it? So I have them print it out and watch themselves. And mostly at first they just observe it and they'll say, oh, I did it. And then all of a sudden they'll notice and they're outside of it. Mm-hmm. And once you can get outside of it, you literally break the biochemical reaction, mm-hmm. and can start grooving in a new series of actions and alter the brain chemistry that's happening.
So is it kind of taking out the thought process of it being good or bad? It's just there, and taking some of that emotional aspect to almost be able to see it outside of yourself, and then be able to analyze it and then reprogram your brain to be able to move in the direction that you want to go? Is that?
Yeah, that's kind of the fundamentals of it. There's all kinds of different applications, but I think given this conversation, that's the value of it.
Okay. So Jen, I'm kind of curious, going back a little bit to your story, obviously in your upbringing and experience, and then defending your daughter, what are some of the tools or techniques or things that you remember doing back then that helped you take your power back, that helped you, kind of push through that and just stop that I'm not enough, or I'm not going to take this, from my family anymore? Is there any, one or a couple things that you remember that you could share with our audience?
Sure. I mean, at the time when that all happened, I was in a transformational program through Lee and Mark, actually, and I was leading programs. And I had a coaching conversation where I was like, not happy about spending time with my family, because I know that that's what I did. They do what they're doing. I'm not blaming them. I don't want any of that. It's just all my own reaction. So when I got, it's all my own reaction, they were actually reacting to my reaction. So in other words, taking the technique, mostly we blame others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look in the world, everybody's busy going, who's at fault? Who's at fault? So if they're not at fault and they're just doing what they're doing and I'm reacting and then they're reacting to my reaction, the only thing I can do to take my power is deal with what I'm doing. So as I was saying, when I'm not blaming and I am seeing that all that's happening is I'm having some reaction to whatever they're doing, has nothing to do with they're doing right or wrong, anything. They're just doing what they're doing. I'm reacting, then they're reacting to my reactions.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I have the opportunity to change my actions. But I've got to be self-aware and committed to something. So that's really what happened, is that I got self-aware of, it's not their fault. They're just doing what they're doing. I'm the reaction. I'm the common denominator. Whenever I show up around them, I'm upset. So maybe it's just me. And so I started altering my behavior, and then their behavior altered and the whole situation altered.
Well, and you make a very good point, because I think our families are obviously triggers for us, because a lot of times we were, raised and have spent many, many years. And a lot of our triggers start when we're young. We're taught the triggers when we're young based on our experiences. So, we hurt the ones we love the most. Well, that's because it's our family and we've been triggered from a young age. And then as we move into adult, that's the only way we know how to react or respond or behave. And so I love this topic right now, because I have not actually spoken with anyone about how the family triggers affect our I'm not enough, or affect, our how we handle that. So I don't know if you have more to share on that, but this piece is fascinating, along with your neuroscience piece, because they go hand in hand. So if you have any additional information to share, I would just love for you to speak more about that.
Yeah, there's one thing that I will tell people to do. So I'm going to ask you a question. Is there something somebody says to you that maybe not now because you're transformed, but is upsetting? Or
sure.
has been? What could they say to you that was upsetting?
Okay, let me think about this. I don't know if they would, it's interesting. I'm not sure if it would be so much what they say, but a lot of times I don't like to find out things after the fact. Okay. So someone may tell, outside of the family, or like my mom may say something to somebody else. And, 2 weeks later, I found out what's going on. She said, "Oh, don't worry about it." I'm like, "Mom, why didn't you tell me this 2 weeks ago? I didn't want to worry about you, but everybody else knows." So I don't know if that's exactly,
that wasn't, but I mean, I can kind of
sorry.
No, that's okay. But I can speak to that because it's already happened, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't what I was going to say, and I'll say it in a different way, but
I'll think about it.
It's already happened, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're upset about it. Mm-hmm. Now, when you didn't know about it, were you upset about it?
No.
But it already happened.
Right.
So why are you upset about it now?
Because I felt left out. I felt I felt unimportant enough to my mom for her to tell me when she told everybody else, or to tell me first, being her daughter. Okay. So I felt less than, because I felt like I was second, third, or fourth, or fifth on the ladder, not in a good way.
That's perfect. So now I'll give you something that is you can take to the bank. Okay. People's actions are always logical for them. Always. 100% of the time, whatever they're doing, it is their logic. It may not be the same logic you use, but it is their logic. So why are you getting upset? Because it was logical for her. So the only thing you can do is find out her logic and then begin to think from that. Oh, okay, mom did that. Well, okay, there's no reason to be upset. She thought it was no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So then what you're left with is you.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, why did I think that was a big deal? Mom didn't think that was a big deal. And then you've got to deal with it. But most likely, just like we were talking about before, it's some brain pattern that got activated where the threat was.
Right.
Then there's a exercise in CIQ called stepping down the ladder of conclusions. And you can step it down for yourself once you take it apart. But I do want to say the other piece, which I was going to do, is people get threatened when somebody says something about them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only reason you're threatened is because you're concerned that that might be true. So I always say, well, okay, you're a tree.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that upset you?
No.
Well, you're a blue tree. Does that upset you?
No, my favorite color.
Okay, good. So why are you then threatened? Because they said you were whatever, not good enough in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're not a tree. So you're not upset by somebody calling you a tree.
Right.
So you know that you're good enough. So somebody else said you're not good enough or whatever, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, not rich enough. Do you know that you are good enough? So whatever they said is their issue.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take it on. Next time somebody says something that reactivates your brain, go, I'm not a tree. And it'll break that brain pattern like that.
Is it true? I've heard that when people say something, it's a projection and kind of, they also possibly think it is of themselves, but instead of admitting it for themselves, they project it onto others.
It could be. Projection is more a psychological term, so I don't play in the psychology weird, but it might be. I invite people to go, what's their logic? I just, in fact, I wrote an article about it. I just had a betrayal. I had a virtual assistant who stole from me, which is a real betrayal, right? It's a betrayal of trust. Her entire response was all defense of herself and how she doesn't see it that way. So I do get that. It is completely logical in her point of view. She doesn't have the capacity, the training, the interest in getting over and get in my world and seeing how it lives. But I do get that. So it's easier to forgive that as long as I'm not holding on to, you're right, you're wrong.
Yeah,
that's expensive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Holding on to upsets is very expensive to me. It causes you emotional stress, the physical stress, don't sleep. It's just not worth it.
Right. Really, our own emotions hurt us. Even though we don't need to be taken advantage of or be hurt, we need to deal with it. We do need to maybe not forget, but do need to forgive and to be able to learn how to handle things so that we aren't damaging ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually, even though we might have been damaged by a person or a situation.
Yeah, totally. So you can always come up with, I'm like, the only real failure is stop trying.
Mm-hmm.
But things will often happen that you don't want to go the way they did.
Right.
Or go a completely different way, and it's shocking and surprising, which then is upsetting for us. But if you take it apart and you go, what was the lesson I learned? Then it was worth it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Janet, and kind of wrapping up, first I want to just thank you, and I could keep talking to you, like I said before, for hours, and look forward to a continued ongoing friendship and relationship with you. But is there anything kind of in closing that you would like to share with regards to your experience, tools and techniques, any advice for our listeners? And then also, please let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you as well if they're interested in having more conversation, if they're interested in coaching and learning more about your business, your books, and what it is that you can offer our listeners.
Yeah, I would say this. So in the realm of not good enough, you are all that you need every moment of time. Sometimes you simply have something that's in your way. So anytime you experience for yourself that you're not enough, see what you can give up about that and restore yourself to who you were born to be, which to me is always magnificent, brilliant, and fully expressed in the world. So that's my last, really important thing. And that's what's important to me, is that people get their brilliance and people get their magnificent. And I really do believe that. And we get in our own way. Mm-hmm. So how you can reach me is, my website is JanetZaretsky.com, which is JanetZaretsky.com. I also have a free confidence kit, which you can get at www.confidentwithnoapology.com. So there's several things. I have a quiz and a download on being confident and not sorry. And that's really, you can email me at janet@janetZaretsky.com. And I so appreciate the opportunity to, first of all, be with you. And I thank you, Penny, for first of having this type of conversation for people. It is so important that we, heal that which we have done to ourselves so that we can contribute fully in the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And when I realized that I was self-sabotaging and doing it to myself, I took my power back and said, no more, I'm not going to do that. And as I talked to people, I realized I wasn't alone. And so that's where the Penny Z Show and this series of Overcoming I'm Not Enough is really coming from. So again, Janet, I just want to thank you very much for your dedication, the work, the people that you've helped around the world, for being on our podcast. We also will have Janet's information on our website. So if you need to go to thepennyzshow.com and look at our previous podcasts, look at this podcast, you also can find us for all of our social media connections. Like us, link us, share us, you name it. We will have Janet's information on our website and all of our social media as well. So you can find her that way also. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, Janet. And thank you everyone for listening again to another wonderful episode of The Penny Z Show. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more, including specific ways to empower yourself, go to thepennyzshow.com.